Hello and welcome to NJ.com's live chat with TV writer Vicki Hyman. Today we'll be talking about the new thriller Fortitude, and we'll also chat a bit about some memorable Super Bowl commercials and the big game's impact on pop culture. Vicki, say hi to everyone.
Hey everybody.
All right. Now you mentioned our first show, Fortitude, briefly a few weeks back.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into detail a little bit about what people can expect from it and what it's about.
Well, if you can find it, because it's on Pivot, which is a fairly new, kind of little-known channel. It is a murder mystery. It's a thriller. It's set in the Arctic Circle. It's on a small Norwegian island, but it's in English. It's populated by some Norwegians, some English, some British people. And they don't have any crime because basically anybody who lives in Fortitude, they have to have a job, they have to be able to support themselves, they have to have a roof over their head. So, as one of the characters say, there's no stealing, there's no crime, and then a murder happens, which kind of taxes the sheriff who's never dealt with this before. But then the sheriff may be able to deal with this in an interesting way because maybe he's involved. Who knows? It's very atmospheric. It's got a wonderful cast. I mean, I love Stanley Tucci. He's just one of my favorite actors ever. He stars in it as he uses his American accent. He's an FBI agent who now works for the Metropolitan Police in London, and the person who dies without telling you who it is a British citizen. So he's flown up there to investigate. Michael Gambon plays a dying wildlife photographer who has some suspicions about the murder. Richard Dormer plays the sheriff. You may not know him. He's an actor from Northern Ireland. He played Beric Dondarrion in Game of Thrones, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Anthony.
Oh, I really am. I know all of those casts, and I know the whole cast of characters. Yeah.
So he's great. He plays the sheriff, who's he seems like he's crinkly-eyed and bearded, kind of really genial, but then he turns menacing fairly quickly.
Well, I mean, all right, this sounds like just another slow burn murder mystery. What makes this particularly different?
Well, I mean, the setting is amazing. I mean, there's these vast glacial expanses. Everybody carries rifles. Even the kids carry rifles because there are polar bears that can occasionally, come into town and eat people. Mm-hmm. It's just really an interesting place that you don't really see very much of. I mean, I actually wish there would be a little more about the show. Remember the movie Insomnia from 13 years back, I think, with Al Pacino, where it's the Midnight Sun, and he's trying to get used to investigating a murder mystery in Alaska, I believe it is. And he gets so discombobulated by it being light out all the time that at one point he's like, yes, let's go to the school to arrest this kid. And it was 4 a.m., but it's bright sunlight out. They don't actually do a lot of that. I think they could play with that a little bit more.
Right. Well, so this is like Twin Peaks meets Insomnia meets Northern Exposure?
Well, it's not as quirky. It's darker. It is a bit slow moving, and unlike a lot of American shows where they depend on and sort of spelling things out, you have to keep up with these people. I mean, there's a lot of characters. Their relationships to each other aren't very obvious at first, and you have to be able to keep up with who they are, what they mean to each other, what secretly is going on behind among them. So it's really good. I mean, if you like to be an active TV watcher, not a passive TV watcher, it's great.
So if people wanted to watch this, you mentioned Pivot.
Yes.
What's Pivot?
It's about a year and a half old. It's this channel that's targeted toward millennials, meaning people that are younger than you and I, Anthony.
Of course. How to rub that in.
Me too.
No.
And they have a reality show about actually a Trenton recycling company. They have a really good Australian comedy called Please Like Me. A lot of sort of quirky stuff. This is their first scripted drama, and it is excellent. But the problem is that it's not available on Comcast here. I don't believe it's not available on Cablevision. You can get it on Verizon Fios. You can get it on Dish and DirecTV. And there has been talk about streaming the first episode to sort of I guess, wet your taste buds. But I was looking this morning and I couldn't find it online.
I can't help feeling sometimes that I judge a show based on the channel it's on. I mean, for example, for me, if it's not on Sundance or AMC, HBO, Showtime, it's probably not that good as a marquee cable show. I know I'm wrong, but I can't be the only one.
But the thing is, you don't really know that much about Pivot. So, and this is a really exciting thing for them to do. I mean, this is a big cast. It's a very, I think it's fairly large budget production, and they have realized, you know, content is absolutely king, and they're going to spend the money to put this really, really strong show out there and hope to get a lot of attention. It worked for AMC, so why can't it work for them?
I'd be curious to find out if this was developed for another country or channel.
Well, it is developed in conjunction with Britain's Sky, which is I think a fairly large network in Britain.
Right.
So it is a co-production.
All right. So you told us why we should watch this. If you're into these, you know, pot boiler kind of mysteries, but why shouldn't we watch this? Who wouldn't like this?
A person who doesn't like to pay attention. A person who, I mean, I am not criticizing people who love Law & Order. I have seen many episodes of Law & Order, but, you know, if you just like to kind of sit there and, you know, watch this show and be like, yeah, I think it's that guy. Or, yeah, it's that guy. You're probably not going to like this one as much.
All right. Well, all right. Moving on. Super Sunday's upon us, and, you know, you have a couple of interesting pieces online about the Super Bowl, the commercials, the impact the events had on pop culture. Let's talk commercials first. You recently listed your top 10 of all time. What factors did you take into consideration in developing the list?
Well, for me, a lot of the ones that made the list have like an emotional gut punch. That's what I look for. Something that really makes me feel something. And so you'll see the Ram Truck Farmer commercial, the Hey Kid Catch, a Mean Joe Green commercial from like way back when. What else? Oh, of course, the Clydesdale, the Budweiser commercial when the Clydesdales clip-clop their way into New York City and bow their head in front of the empty skyline after the Twin Towers went down. I also like, you know, really funny ones. I like ones that aren't even necessarily like laugh out loud funny, but like really clever and smart, like that Monster.com one they came up with a couple of years ago, where they have all these kids talking about their sad ideas of what they want to be when they grow up. Like, I want to be a middle manager. I want to have a brown nose. And I really like that one.
Which spots didn't make the cut? I mean, is there anything that people will remember? Ah, yes, I remember that, but it's not on your list?
Well, actually, one that I didn't realize was even a Super Bowl commercial, and I absolutely should have, was the Phil Simms I'm going to Disney World commercial, which of course I should have known because they said you've just won the Super Bowl. And I didn't realize that. I didn't really think about it until I was working on my other story, which is 9 times the Super Bowl changed America, because I apparently love hyperbole. And I actually made that one of my times because it was such a memorable catchphrase, and it's still going strong. You know, there's also Where's the Beef, there's What's Up, but there's something about I'm going to Disney World that is both really innocent and yet it's also kind of crass. So.
Right. Well, right. You mentioned one of those cultural moments, and I can think of a couple more off the top of my head. What else is on that list, per se?
Well, if you do want to get to my number one, and we can discuss that a little bit, or just some other things on the list.
Whatever you like, Vicki.
Well, I mentioned, well, Darth Vader, the kid Darth Vader.
I love that kid.
Yeah, which is so whimsical, so wonderful. Everything about that is just, it's just perfectly done.
Great
the music, it's really great. Now, I personally love the Snickers ads. I think the first one might have come out with Betty White a few years ago, where they're playing tag football and Betty White's, you know, grumpy and being beaten up, and then finally Betty White's girlfriend gives her a Snickers bar and it turns into a regular guy. That's what he needed. And now, this year, they're doing another run where you have Danny Trejo, who's that sort of like this mean biker-looking actor, who is in the Brady Bunch as Marcia. Right. And just kind of like speaking the lines, he's got like, you know, the knife and everything. I just think they're incredibly funny.
You know, we spoke about this a few minutes ago. That commercial for me gets a big thumbs down. And I'm not good. There's a great spoiler in the commercial. I'm not going to ruin it for everybody.
I love the spoiler.
But I think it's been there, done that. It feels old. It feels tired. It feels sticky. Kind of like that E-Trade Baby. Like, we've seen the E-Trade Baby now for like what seems to be 10 years.
I just think the casting was inspired. I mean, Danny Trejo as Marcia Brady.
Yeah. I mean, if you could get past that, it's kind of a lame commercial. That's just my opinion.
Fair enough.
What else? What else do you have?
I have the Monsters, Monster.com. I have the Budweiser Frogs commercial. They're very memorable. The Cindy Crawford cans commercial, the Pepsi one where she's she's drinking out of Pepsi can. And I guess my number one and my number two. My number two is the Apple ad, the 1984 ad, the Orwellian ad that introduced the Macintosh computer, which was both an innovative ad and it actually really worked. It sold like a humongous amount of Macintosh computers, and it really changed the game as far as Super Bowl commercials go. It really introduced the fact that you have to like go big or go home with these ads. But my favorite one is the Mean Joe Green ad, and maybe somebody who is 20 years younger than I am wouldn't feel the same way. But when I'm growing up, that was it just hit all the right notes for me growing up, and I will always remember it.
I remember both those spots fondly. Especially the Mean Joe Green commercial. I think if I were doing the same list, I probably would have switched the number one and the number two. I think that Apple ad set the pace for Super Bowl commercials to come for the next 20 some odd years. It's an incredible spot. Aired only once, directed by Ridley Scott, and just it felt like a movie. And I think now when we watch these commercials, we kind of take them for granted, like, oh, it's a big Super Bowl commercial, but they weren't really doing that until that Apple spot came along. So I probably would have switched them. But all right, real quick, let's talk about any ads from this year that have been released that may have potential to make a future top 10 list.
Well, as I said, I did like the Stickers ad a lot. I think actually I would swap out the Danny Trejo for my Betty White one because I just think I love it. I don't know if I would put this on my top 10 list. I'd have to think about it a little more, but like a very affecting one was one that came out a couple of days ago, the PSA about domestic violence. In case you haven't seen it, it opens with the camera's panning around a living room that clearly there's been some violence there. And you hear a woman call in to order pizza, but she's actually calling 911, and slowly the 911 operator realizes she can't speak freely. I'm sorry, I'm getting chills just speaking about it. It's actually supposedly based on a real 911 call.
I agree. I actually watched the ad. Wasn't expecting much out of it, being that it was like a PSA, but wow, that commercial instantly became one of my favorites this year. And I didn't even see the rest of the ads. I know that ad is going to be on my top 10 easily. Before we wrap this chat up, tell us what you're looking forward to in the coming week.
Well, for those of you who don't like football, there is the Kitten Bowl and the Puppy Bowl and the Fish Bowl. And for the first time ever, there's the Toddler Bowl. It's this half-hour show on TLC at noon where they have, I guess, 1 to 3-year-old kids on a mini gridiron, doing touchdown dances and just being really, really cute. Okay, fine. There's also the Zombie Bowl, which is basically just AMC playing the first 2 seasons of The Walking Dead in a marathon. I think it starts at like 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. I can't remember which one. But keep an eye out because the following Sunday night is when The Walking Dead returns to finish off its 5th season. And also, it also is the springboard, I believe, for Better Call Saul, which is the Breaking Bad prequel. But coming up this week, otherwise, 2 interesting shows. We have Fresh Off the Boat, which is an ABC sitcom based on, it's set in the 80s, but it's not too 80s like the Goldbergs, about a Taiwanese family growing up in Florida where the father runs a sort of a cowboy-themed steakhouse, and the kids trying to assimilate and trying to get all into hip-hop and stuff, and it looks actually pretty funny. And that's on Wednesday night on ABC, and on Thursday night on NBC is Allegiance, which I have the screener for. I haven't watched it yet. It looks interesting. It's about a CIA analyst who discovers that his parents are actually Russian moles or sleeper agents, which is very much in the news these days, has been for the last couple of years. And it's also another show that's very popular on FX? Sorry.
FX, The Americans.
The Americans, thank you very much, which also premiered this past Wednesday. The third season premiered this last Wednesday. So it looks interesting. I'm going to watch it. It's got a few actors that I really like, including Hope Davis. So, maybe next week I'll come back and say, but
well, you never know. Your plate sounds it sounds very full. That wraps it up for us this week. Join us next week for another TV chat. And until then, visit NJ.com/entertainment for more Vicki Hyman, as well as our entertainment coverage of the Super Bowl. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.